Hello and welcome to everyone who is dialed into the end of Channel Chaos with Douglas and Virgin Media. Let's start with some introductions here. So my name is Georgie. I'm a strategic customer success manager at Zeotap, and I have the pleasure of working with both of today's guests. Tech, Musty, would you like to give a rundown of each of your roles?
Sure. So I'm Tech. I'm on the Virgin Media O2 side. My official title is Head of Ad Tech and Audience, and I look after multiple ad tech platforms, trying to help enable the paid media channels, audience across several different channels, and then consent as well, which has become a very important piece for all of these activations. So nice to meet you all.
Thank you. And over to you,
Hi.
Musty.
Hi. Thanks, Georgie and Tech. Masti, I lead the customer activation team internally at Douglas, and customer activation, we are mainly in charge of CRM channels and also the segmentation for our paid and retail media channels. And along with that, I own the CDP project internally at Douglas. And really looking forward to the session with Georgie and Tech.
Great. So two very different industries spanning different regions, but with a lot of similarities when it comes to solving challenges around multiple marketing channels and working towards that seamless customer experience. So I'm going to throw the first few questions to both of you here. Masti, let's start with you on this one. In one or two sentences, what does omnichannel orchestration mean for your customer? And not the textbook definition, but the one you actually work towards.
Sure. So I think for the listeners, I think so. Douglas is is the largest omni-channel beauty retailer in Europe, which means that we work across various channels. So we work across a lot of online channels, and also we have roughly around 1,900 stores. So for us, the best definition of an omni-channel would be that a customer that's entering a Douglas store, as well as a customer who enters the Douglas website, needs to say the same thing, needs to see the same offer, need to see the same pricing. So that, in our definition, is the whole omni-channel orchestration, which we try to achieve. We, of course, achieve it a bit in silos, like performance marketing sees its own thing, CRM sees its own thing, and retail media sees its own thing. But we want our customers to have a unified experience across all channels, and that is what we want to achieve with omni-channel orchestration.
Great, thank you. And over to you, Tech.
So very similar at Virgin Media and O2. We have a lot of offline stores. So when we talk about omnichannel at VMO2, it's around both the online and offline channels. So just to build on what Massey said, it is that single kind of unified experience. But I would also add that for us, is that continuation of experience. So not just seeing the same thing within both the offline and online, but as soon as you interact on the offline, like with the offline agent, whether that's a retail store, contact center, and then I go online within the next few minutes, I see not just the same experience, but some experience that was informed by the previous interaction as well. So it's bringing all that context and that continuation of context through that journey.
Great. I think we are very aligned on the omnichannel journeys here. That's solid definitions, and I'm glad that we're moving a little bit away from the textbooks as well and further into the real life experience. Let's go with this one. If you had to name the single biggest myth about omnichannel marketing, what would it be? Shall we start with you, Tech?
For me, so a big part of omnichannel, once you start talking about multiple different areas, is that decisioning aspect. So that intelligence behind which channel to approach, how to interact with different channels differently, and all of this. I would say the biggest myth is that it has to all come from one place. So one key thing about omnichannel is that democratization of data, that same kind of customer profile, that same kind of customer base is shared across everywhere, but then allow different platforms and different areas of the business to make their own decisions, whatever's strongest within that particular part. Yes, there could be some kind of like central orchestration, but when you think about, like for example, in Virgin Media 2, when we talk about pricing recommendation versus audience recommendation, that those are two very separate things using two very separate models. So again, we let the power of like data science control one, but then we let the power of like marketing teams control the other. So let that decisioning branch out and not just follow the myth of having to do everything in one place.
So really sort of working towards the strengths of each part of the whole process.
Correct. Yes. Even within CDP, showing that audience over, we may not necessarily have the full context of like creative optimization. So that's when you rely on your DCO tool to optimize that creative across different channels as well within paid realm.
All right, perfect. Thanks for sharing that one. Nasty.
Yeah, I think a bit similar, because I think there is a myth that sometimes one size fits all when it comes to your tooling landscape also, and sometimes they feel that okay, CDP in the picture can actually address all these concerns of omni-channel marketing, but you need to be a little more intelligent in understanding how your tech stack is. So that's the thing. But also I think the other thing which we sometimes feel is that omni-channel marketing doesn't mean that you need to be present in all channels. It's more about the right channel for the customer, and not to like you don't have to have 10 placements on Meta, 10 placements on Google, 10 placements in your email activation. It's more about having the right customer journey and right customer touch points. I think that would be a better way of looking at omnichannel, and not just putting ads everywhere and saying that you do omnichannel marketing, right? So yeah, so that would be the other thing which I would add to Tech's answer.
Yeah, I think that is an important distinction. Not everybody engages with every channel. It's finding the right ones for that customer. All right, perfect. So I think we can agree on some of these myths. So let's go on to where the breakdown usually happens. So would you say it's a data problem, a tooling problem, or is it more of an organizational problem?
Yeah, I could go first. So I think it's a combination of everything. It's a combination of everything. But if I look at it like to make it a bit more concrete, of course, I think the first fundamental check is your data. Is your data quality, where it sits? Is the data unified in the best possible way? And then it leads to the tooling landscape above it, the architecture of the tools that sit above the data layer, or the data warehouse as such. And then you also need to have the organization that actually believes that, hey, this is the right way to go in terms of your architecture, right? So it's a combination of all of these 3 points. But yeah, I can't pinpoint it's just one thing. It has to, all three need to be in sync to have a great omnichannel strategy.
That's a good line. I like that. All three do need to be in sync. I'll agree with that one. And Tech?
Yes. So when thinking about omnichannel as a whole, I totally agree. Yeah, all three need to be in line. I can give you a bit of a flavor from the VMO2 side. What we do have, I can say at VMO2, is abundance of platforms. So it's less of a tooling problem within Virgin Media O2. We have so many platforms that have so many overlapping capabilities that starts to becoming the problem, rather than the absence of a tooling capability. But then to build on what Matthew said as well, data that feeds these platforms. So you can have all the platforms in the world, and you're paying millions for them, or hundreds of thousands, whatever it is. We're not enriching or hydrating them with the right data, so we're leaving them shortchanged, right? We have all that power there, but it has no ammunition to fire. It is the key thing for us at VMO2. And then the last one, which I think will come up again in future questions, is the organizational side, where omnichannel is by its very nature across several different areas, and without that buy-in and belief in that single vision of omnichannel, you're really going to struggle. When you're working, for example, just in performance marketing, just in paid, just in CRM, you can work within your isolated team for a very singular problem. But when it comes to omnichannel, there's so many considerations you have to take into account and work together as a whole, and sometimes sacrifice maybe a bit of your KPI for their KPI, and then you can reach that true omnichannel vision. But to get to that, it's a lot harder in reality than to say.
Definitely easier said than done. And I would like to dig into some of the things you mentioned there as we go. Thank you for that. And I will go over to Masti for the next one and just say, I mean, you've got a big offline retail presence at Douglas. How does the offline journey compare to the online journey?
So I think the offline journey for Douglas is very spontaneous, because we do have stores in different in all the big cities across Europe. So it's a very spontaneous thing. It's very brand driven. It's more about your it's a bit more impulsive than compared to the online journey. So the online journey is a bit more researched. So that's why we really look at so we really look at cases like Ropo and stuff, which we will discuss a bit more later, like research online, purchase offline kind of thing. So we tend to look at more of these use cases because we think that we need to bridge the gap between the offline customer journey and the online customer journey a bit more. And I think they currently run sometimes into silos, right? So yeah, so online journey is a bit more researched and more easy to be personalized a bit, whereas offline journey is completely impulsive. That's how we differentiate it. Yeah.
That sounds like two very different ways to approach it. And I guess following on from that one, how do you bridge that gap between the offline and the online?
So this is pretty much the how do you say this? This is pretty much the challenge in which we feel that a CDP plays a very big role in the sense that we need the ID stitching to happen, and this identity stitching between your offline and online data needs to happen in the CDP to have that singular view of the customer. And this is where we see the CDP make a difference. Um, as you know, you work with us, it's still a work in progress, but that's something we definitely want to achieve with the CDP because that's the only way to bridge the gap. Which again means going back to the previous thing, we need to check our data because our data sources for offline and online are two different. So we need to bridge that together, align it within the CDP in the best possible way to have the singular view, right? So yeah, so that's how we try to combine our offline and online experiences and combine the data so that we have a singular view of a customer.
Perfect. And tech, I mean, the offline part is very much present for Virgin Media as well. In telco marketing, how do you sort of fill that gap when you've got field sales, stores, and call center operations, as well as other digital channels? So, how do you keep a consistent view of that customer across paid media and every other interaction that they have?
Yeah, I would. So a CDP for us here is also very important in terms of ingesting all of that data, whether that's the online interaction data or the offline agent data to inform each other and vice versa. But to take a step before that, even coming to CDP, right? Because CDP and MarTech and AdTech are only one of the one area of the business, right? There's so many other areas where you talk when that need to make use of, for example, our product holding API, our connectivity API, our pricing API. So all of these different kind of data feeds in Virgin Media O2, we rely on a microservice layer that makes these commonly used APIs available across the business. So whether you're talking operations or finance or network or marketing, we will feed into this microservice architecture and draw the relevant data that we need, whether that's offline data or online data in real time. And then we use the CDP once we have that connections with those real-time APIs and built that event architecture to inform our decision making downstream for marketing.
Got it. So I think you both really mentioned that the stitching is key here. So I think it's important to touch on like how we sort of approach that stitching because we do have quite a flexible ID strategy. How do you see that working when somebody's a cookie in one channel and a mobile phone number in another, and then they turn up somewhere else in something completely different with a different ID?
So maybe I can go your tech.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the hierarchy of the ID strategy is something that I think we do very well with the CDP with Zeotap in the sense that it is very clear what is the first what is how do you say the primary ID that we want to look at. And sometimes we started off by looking at say email is our primary ID. That is how we will define our marketing. It will be based on email, and then it would be next would be the phone number, then it would be the cookies side of things. So I think having a hierarchy of this ID strategy gives us like, hey, this is how we are going to look at our customer in terms of identifiers that we collect from them. So I think that helps us a bit in this. But yeah.
So from the
Excellent.
VMO2 side, yeah, George, it's so there are several different identity solutions that exist within the business. For us, a lot, like for example, there's a team that manages single ID. We move because we're two separate brands in Virgin Media and O2. We're trying to, and they both had separate like onboarding processes. We are combining that into one now, where they both log into, and then we have a unified ID across brands. So that's one version of like identity stitching we do. A second one is partnering with data partners like Experian, where we use their data to supplement and do some matching across VM and O2 for us. But ultimately, when it comes to MarTech and AdTech channels and spaces, CDP is where we rely the heaviest on. And just as Massey said, then it's all about the ID hierarchy, especially when you're talking about marketing, because we have an abundance of identifiers within this space, right? We have the ones that our teams use upstream as well, and those other strategies like email, like phone number. But when you think about marketing, then we have so many others, right? We have ID5 ID, we have the cookie ID1, GAID2, Zeotap ID. So all of this we need to resolve in an intelligent way, and that's where we use the CDP really to do the identity for marketing itself.
That's really interesting. The additional ones outside of just the online channels too. So thank you for sharing that one. I am curious as well. What's the sort of one channel where you don't feel that you yet have a complete customer view, and why is that one a bit harder to achieve?
As if I jump in right here, because telco, it's a problem we are still working through, and it's not just our isolated problem here, but within telco specifically, around the ID space, it's that resolution between an household ID. So on like the Virgin Media side, we sell based on the household rather than the customer level.
Of course.
On the O2 side, a lot of it's resolved at the SIM card level. And then obviously you have the actual customer, right? So if you think about all of these three different areas I mentioned, household, SIM card ID versus customer ID, that creates multiple one-to-many relationships and many-to-one relationships, right? So as a customer, single customer ID, I have multiple SIM card IDs associated to me. But at the same time, there could be multiple customers within one household as well. So it works both way around. And that resolvement across one to many, many to one is a real challenge within telco, and is one that we don't have the full answer to yet, but we are working towards that direction of still being resolving to the actual customer rather than household or like subscription IDs.
It's definitely a complex one. And what about in the retail space, Musty?
I think honestly, it's very similar to what Tech mentioned, because we have so I think especially in DACH, that is Germany, Austria, Switzerland, we do have a lot of customers who are still relying on our print magazines, and basically it's based on postal codes based targeting, which is just impossible to kind of connected to our bigger plan of omni-channel orchestration, because and in the end it's also about the demographics that we target, right? I think what we realized is that it's the demographics for print recipients are about the age of 50 who still rely on this Douglas magazine going to them, and we really can't do anything personalized for them. So this is a massive gap, in which is like based on postal codes, based on house location, rather than so there's no one-on-one personalization possible. There's no omni-channel. There's no orchestration possible. So yeah, this is the biggest gap that we try to address. We try to kind of bring in specific offers that can be redeemed only by say from the Douglas magazine, which helps us track it in some way. But that's a constant work in progress. So yeah, so yeah,
So
it's very
bringing one of the traditional types of
yes,
marketing into the fold and unifying it. I can
true.
see why that would be a tricky one, and it's a shame because the Douglas magazines are beautiful. I can understand why people want them.
And it's expensive, right? So it's also very expensive to keep producing them without having like a definite how do you say, a metric associated to it. But it's a work in progress. I think we try giving something specific that only the Douglas magazine recipients can redeem. So yeah, that's just constant work that we do to justify why we need the channel, and it's so important for us because we have more than 1 million people who need that magazine. Yeah.
I love that. They do need it. They need it.
Yeah, they need it. They need it.
Perfect. Let's move on to some of the positives, because I think we've dwelled on what some of the challenges are, but I know that both of you have made great progress in your organizations. Maybe Tech, could you walk us through an example of a campaign where having that unified audience view changed the outcome? So, coordinating suppression or retargeting across paid channels, or something of that sort, so that customers aren't served the same message, or worse, a contradictory one.
Yeah, I would say one of the first ones for any paid media strategy, right, is suppression, and it's coordinating that suppression across multiple different channels within that space. So at the top level, all our budget and all our strategy is defined by in-life cross-sell upsell and new acquisition sales, right? So that divide of who our existing customers are versus going after new prospects is very important. And through through working with yourselves at Zeotap, we've got a very refined and robust existing customer audience that we share consistently across all of our paid media channels, including some other non-paid media channels, where we split out, as I said, our strategy very much into new acquisition and in-life cross-sell upsell. And then through that, we can very much consistently target our existing base, whether that is in paid or otherwise, with a consistent message, and otherwise go after our new prospects and make sure, especially in the paid space, not ensure that we have no wasted dollars spending on existing customers, where we have our offers, our strategies, and all our KPIs aligned to, for example, new acquisition numbers. So I would say, yeah, the suppression one for us is one that we did very much at the start, but still very much driving the dollars for us today.
Yeah, simple but very effective in lots of ways.
Yes.
Moving into that sort of existing customer space, on the O2 side, I know you've used some lookalike models for things like device launches, to actually do the opposite of suppression and target some customers. What made that approach sort of more effective than a standard sort of broad targeting campaign? And is there anything that you would tell somebody who is looking to try the same thing?
I would say when trying to be more targeted, especially using lookalikes versus broad targeting, is to have a think about what unique and uh, special data each platform and each area of the business has. So, for example, when we do lookalike targeting within Zeotap using our first-party data, there's a lot of data points in there that nobody else has. So for certain campaigns like that, we use that. But I would say don't be restricted to just using one kind of lookalike. Whereas, when we're working with partners like Google or working with partners like Facebook, they have that whole universe of data themselves as well, which some of it stronger than what we held internally on our first party customers as well, right? The amount of data that Google and Facebook hold. So branch out, use lookalikes in those platforms as well, and definitely test them against each other. So I wouldn't say first party lookalikes are better than third party. It's very much dependent on what data is being used and for what specific use case. So yeah, take home message is to experiment across the different type of lookalike models.
That context definitely matters.
Yes.
Absolutely. And Masti, in the paid media space, you've used some CDP built audiences in performance media, as well as the platform audiences. What differences showed up, and what really convinced the teams that the CDP audiences were worth using?
Yeah, so I think maybe one more because I think Tech mentioned this before. So some of the success cases that we've seen in paid media are clearly suppression. I think this is based on the CDP audiences that we've used. So suppression plays one of the biggest success metrics that we've seen. It's very similar to the other success case I would say is replenishment. So I think suppression and replenishment for us have been two wins. I would say when it comes to CDP audiences in paid media activities. But yeah, so I think the genesis for us was that we moved away from platform-based audiences towards CDP audiences, and the biggest success we saw there, apart from the two use cases, was the increase in match rates, which was very straightforward because in the end you are kind of seeing better match rates, be it in Meta, be it in TikTok or Pinterest, these channels. We saw roughly at least 25 to 30% increase in match rates when we used our first party audiences compared to the platform audiences. So that was, so that's pretty much the biggest win we have seen using CDP audiences. And this is one of the reasons why we chose CDP in the first place, to see this increase in match days, to have more control over your data in a way, and to own a bit more of your first party data in the best possible way, so that even when you do some kind of modeling, lookalike modeling, whatever you're doing with your first party audiences, it actually, for us, it gives you more like-minded users who would actually purchase, right? So that's been a win for us, and that's why we prefer a CDP audience over a platform audience.
Great. And what about email channels? I know that you look after email channels too. So personalizing emails based on sort of behavior like categories and affinity modeling, category level affinity compared to just a generic product recommendation. How has that sort of changed your email campaigns?
It's definitely made it a bit. So one of the biggest pillars that we have in Douglas is personalization, and that way we had to move towards more affinity-based models that could help our email marketing. And so we have not just for category-based affinity, we also have for brand affinity, we also have something for promo affinity. And so when we combine all of it together, the whole experience is a bit more personalized, and definitely. And category, we have roughly around 4 different levels of category when it comes to category based marketing. So it really is very personalized that way, compared to just a normal product recommendation. So agree, we have multiple tools that help us achieve it in a way, but it's definitely a direction we move towards, to make it more, to go more towards affinity based targeting than just product reco based targeting.
All right, perfect. I do want to jump back now to something that you both sort of touched on at the start, with tooling being a bit of a challenge for orchestration. What do you find works well in finding the right balance between platform capabilities?
I want to echo what I said earlier on this point as well, because it's a real challenge of ours at Media O2. It's that abundance of platforms and that overlap of capabilities. So I would say it's very much getting behind when you have an overlap of capabilities. To choose any particular one, you really need to get the business and the organization behind that committed choice. So there's when platforms are becoming so branching out and cannibalizing each other's capabilities these days to try to become that like suite-based product, it's really getting the team behind that one chosen solution, and rather than doing bit pieces within each. So for example, if two platforms of yours can do audience segmentation, then don't do partial segmentation in both. Really commit to one choice, and produce and enforce that governance layer to allow teams to believe in that one solution, and then still use the other solution for what other extra capabilities it has, but don't start to do audience like segmentation in 3-4 different platforms, because all 3-4 of them can do it. So just because you can, don't it's not necessary.
Doesn't mean you should.
It's honestly, I will just echo whatever Tech said, because I think over tooling is the biggest concern. I think most companies, not just retailers, any enterprise company is facing this, in the sense you do have 4 or 5 tools within. I'm giving a minimum example of 4 or 5 tools, but who pretty much do the same thing, because everyone, whoever is speaking. It's also decision making done in silos, right? So in the end, decision making done in silos leads to every team picking their own tool, which pretty much does similar stuff which their tool which is already purchased by another department. So this leads to 4 or 5 tools doing the same stuff, which is really not productive in the end. And so I totally agree with Tech that there definitely needs to be a governance layer there, which really checks the capabilities of each tool. If your segmentation needs to be centralized in one tool, let it be. If your activation needs to be centralized on another tool, that's fair enough. But yeah, don't use 10-20% of every tool and then in the end say that you have all these tools in your tech stack, and then it really doesn't matter if you have the best tool, the number one ranked tool or number two ranked tool. It really doesn't matter if you're not using it well, right? So I think over tooling and decision making definitely is a challenge, and this could be across any company, I would say, in Europe. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's probably a few people dialed in that can relate to this one. If you had to give everyone one piece of advice on how to tackle getting omnichannel orchestration up to where you have it, what would be the first thing to address?
Yeah, so I can go take. So I think the first fundamental thing to address is your data foundation and your quality of data, because if that foundation is not aligned with, then it doesn't matter what tool you have or what tech stack you have above it, because in the end, I know this is a very nice webinar, so I won't use a bad word. So bad data in is always bad data out. So in the end, so fix your data issues, understand where your data is coming in, make sure that the data is unified, and only then it could be used in the best possible way, no matter what your activation tool is at the end, right? So yeah, so I would just say that would be a starting point.
Yeah, if I data is definitely the one I'd go to as well. If I just give a number two rather than a different opinion, because I still agree as data, is ensure that you have the stakeholder buy-in across teams. When approaching omni-channel, again, the very nature of it is multi-team, right? Each one's going to be used to their own processes, their own briefing templates, etc. It's that kind of interdependency between teams is going to be a lot more heightened when you work through omni-channel campaigns. So there's a definite difficulty doing that at big corporations, but if you have senior level stakeholder buy-in, it's sometimes best, as much as I hate normally doing it this way, sometimes best coming top down rather than bottoms up between coordinating, like 5-6 teams.
Yeah. Okay, so data first, senior alignment second. And what is one thing that you found sort of surprising about having all of your data unified across channels and working together?
When we did this at VMO2, the one thing that really came out of it was the ability to speak in the same language across the teams. So once we unified across the channels, especially using the CDP, is that ability to when I say about this audience, everybody understands what audience that is, right? There's not another version of that audience, maybe just slightly changed, the name is slightly different, or another version of that audience where the data was built slightly differently via the logic or via the different data source. So that unified understanding, and then that just streamlines conversations as well going forward. That once we mention something, everybody
Communication.
works to it. Yes, that's
Nice.
the big one that really came out of unifying.
It's always good to have a nice surprise.
True, and it's just the awareness, right? I think everyone knows that this could work well, but they need time to buy into it till they actually see a result, till they actually see the stitch work, till they actually see one example of activation. Till then, you don't have the buy-in. It's only when it's done and there's some result out of it, oh, then they say, okay, now it makes sense. So I think the awareness definitely has improved tremendously in the last 1 year here at Douglas. Is that yeah, so I think following up what Tech said, yeah, I think the awareness, and then you have the buy-in, because if we can show 1 or 2 successful cases, then they're like, okay, it made sense what you told us 1.5 years ago. So it takes time to get that buy-in, and when they have the buy-in, they are more on track to try new stuff in the future also. Yeah.
Of course, of course. And looking towards the future now, you've both built fantastic foundations here. So Masti, I'll start with you on this one because I know Douglas have a big retail media offering. It's a really fast-growing project for a lot of brands and retailers right now. Where do you see that going, and what does it really need from the data infrastructure to go well?
So yeah, so it is one of our fastest growing divisions within the Douglas ecosystem, and everyone is aware that retail media is the space to grow. Because a lot of other marketing channels are a bit more saturated, and you really want to look at new avenues, and retail media has become that avenue for us in the last 1 year. And from a data infrastructure point of view, what we need is to how well can we work with data clean rooms, and this is data clean room has become a massive topic internally, like how well can, because we also collaborate with a lot of brands. So from a retailer space, you work with brands like L'Oreal, Coty, and all these big brands, and all of them request that, hey, how can you work with our data clean room well, can you collaborate with us well? So I think from a tech point of view, that is something we definitely want to look at. How well can Douglas tech infrastructure work well with, say, the data clean room of one Douglas's own data clean room, or the data clean room of a brand, right? So that would be the biggest thing. And also just working well with retail media networks. For example, currently we have Criteo Retail Media Network. We also are in discussions with other retail media networks that we want to collaborate with. So these are the stuff where we definitely see our tech move towards, which means that even our CDP needs to be more compatible with a data clean room in the future, right? Or a Criteo or any retail media network that we have now and in the future. So I would say these two things from a tech lens would definitely help the retail media journey for us.
So having that clear connection between CDP and clean room to make sure that you can facilitate data out to the manufacturer.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Because in the end, we do want to send the same data, which is already segmented in the best possible way, to the different partners that we work with. And this opens the whole B2B side of stuff, which we are getting used to now in the retail media lingo. We are completely B2C, but B2B is becoming much bigger for us. Yeah.
Got it. And tech, what's the next omnichannel problem on your list? So the thing that you haven't quite solved yet, but you know that we definitely need to get there.
So I think you're quite familiar with this one, but a VMO2 would be prospect orchestration. So different to it's really omni-channel for prospects, and the reason why this is a particular problem for us is within the customer space, you got so many more data points. There's so many things, so many more opportunities to interact with that customer when they log on, when they come to your site, to your store, and any of these things. And then in addition to that, you have so much more data on them. So there's so much more personalization and treatment of that customer you can provide. But when it comes to prospect omnichannel orchestration, it's that challenge of working with less, but also providing that that omnichannel, that the consistent customer experience for them. So it's something we have not yet solved, but we've got great ambitions in this area. And from a commercial point of view as well, half of our sales still come through. Half of our new acquisition sales and prospects come from offline. So we still need to really crack that offline and online problem for prospects that we don't quite have today.
It's definitely a good project. Yeah.
It's yeah.
I will finish off with just a couple more questions, and then we'll throw it to the audience just to see if there is any questions that they would like to throw to you both before we finish. So I think we've spoken a lot about tooling and tech stacks. I'd be interested to hear about your thoughts, this is to both of you, on how composable might affect the way you deliver customer-centric journeys in the future.
Yeah, I can go take. So I think the biggest case for composable CDP in a way is that it's going to pretty much sit on your data warehouse in some way, right? And if it's going to sit on your data warehouse, it reduces the data lag, or even the drop of data, say from whatever warehouse you have. It could be Databricks, Snowflake, whatever. It would just make it a bit more how do you say, you wouldn't have any data lag in it. So this means that you wouldn't drop data, the data would not fall between, you don't have to work on such an elaborate API connection between your CDP and your and your data warehouse, and all the decisioning can kind of happen in your data warehouse itself. So I think this is something that I think is a win, because a lot of companies do have solid data warehouses, and they want to make their decision making, and be it for analytics or anything, happen in the data warehouse. So that way, a composable CDP would definitely be a win for companies. So that's where we see the benefit of it. Of course, we don't have it yet, but it's just something that could be something that we could look in for sure.
So really, that speed of communication.
True.
Mm.
Yeah. Outside of those tangible benefits, I'll focus more on the intangible as a stakeholder like CDP and enterprise is, and not just at Virgin Media O2. In my previous experience across several other enterprises as well, one big architectural limitation you'll find with these big companies is a third-party platform talking to another third-party platform, right? So they don't consider a data warehouse third-party platform, but they'll consider a CDP that's non-composable as a third-party platform. So to plug that, for example, into Braze, to plug that into, for example, Salesforce, they don't like that kind of communication unless it loops back to your data warehouse. So by moving to composable CDP solution, and they have clear reasons for that as well, right? That largely comes from the privacy aspect, the security aspect. So all of these more non-functional benefits, those are things that I'd be excited to skip past in conversations, and not having to be raised every time that, oh, but this goes against our architectural principle of, third party to third party. So yeah, that's a big one for me by moving to composable.
So opening a speed to connections in the future.
Yes, and to cut through red tape of yeah.
Perfect. And I think I almost feel like I have to apologize for this last question, but it's got to be in every webinar, I feel. What about AI and how that will impact the way your customer journeys are today?
Yeah, sure. I think AI is pretty much in every single topic that we have. I think I think the one benefit that we have is because we are based out of Germany, and just the whole landscape of Germany and not the UK. There is so much red tape and so much governance in place that it's very difficult to go live with a lot of things which we have in mind, right? So right now we have to adhere to the EU AI Act, which is so, and then we need to we have an AI governance team that literally checks what is the AI capabilities of each and every tool that we have before we actually do anything in terms of use cases. Of course, in our head, we have a bunch of stuff in mind. We want to look at, say AI in terms of like send time optimization. We want to optimize the customer journey in the easiest way. We also want to look at use cases like next best option. But all of this is just on paper for us yet. So we really haven't actioned any of it. And thankfully, we have not, because we're still in Germany and we have to still, there's a lot of loopholes to cross before we actually we look at use cases from other companies in the US or UK and like, okay, wow, this is something we need to try. But for us, it's still very much on paper. We want to try a few things. The easy ones are the topics like frequency capping, send time optimization, next best offer. These are stuff that we definitely we see play a big role in the customer journey. But yeah, so we are just early days from Germany, to be honest.
That's an interesting one, of course, with the privacy and governance aspect there. But hopefully, one day.
See, Georgie, we have a Q&A as well. Maybe we...
Yeah, would you like to... I think that we might have covered this, but when you have functionality overlapping between tools in your tech stack, how do you decide where it should sit? So it was partially answered, but not entirely. Curious about this one.
Spoke a lot about this. So when it comes down to like technology platforms that sit within like the same hierarchy, same level. For example, if you have Adobe Campaign Manager and a Braze, and they're just specifically there to send out email campaigns, it's to do pros and cons versus each, right? You look at the commercials, you look at the capability, and you decide that way. But then the trickier question in terms of overlap capability is when things don't sit on the same hierarchy, For example, when you talk about CDP versus Braze or CDP versus Adobe Campaign, both of them can do Adobe audience segmentation, but only one of them can do, for example, true identity resolution, and only one of them can do true uh, CRM like emails, SMS, and push activation. So that's when it becomes trickier. So because they have unique capabilities, but they share, for example, like the audience segmentation capability, then it's a question of again, if you think about omnichannel, if you're truly trying to get there, think of a platform that sits further upstream, because you do all the segmentation within, for example, Adobe Campaign or Braze. You can't necessarily share that with paid later, right? You can't necessarily share that with CRO later. So it's that concept of also moving upstream. The higher up you go, the more impact, the more spread it potentially can in terms of using that capability downstream.
Nasty, I can see you nodding with that one.
Yeah, I think it's very similar for us because we do have, so for example, what we have desired is that the segmentation would kind of happen in the CDP because, like Tech mentioned, CDP has the capabilities of ID resolution and is also connected to our paid channels. So even though we have MRSys that also can do a segmentation, but it can do it only in the lens of just email marketing, right? So what we have to do is, this is a decision that we made, and like Tech mentioned, all of this sits under one hierarchy, so it's easier to do it. If the CDP sat in a completely different division and MRs sat under one person, then it would become a clash of like, hey, I want to do it my way. But if it depends so much on organization hierarchy and where the two platforms sit. If all of them sit under one division, it's easy to allocate and make decision making. So now it's very clear that okay, CDP does segmentation, and then we send it to MRSys, and then MRSys can do its own version of segmentation, a micro version of it, and send it to the customer. But yeah, so a lot of it is based on organizational hierarchy, and then you look at the capabilities after that, because like most of the tools do very similar stuff sometimes. So yeah.
So it's a bit of a balance between the organization and the capability
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think we're slightly over time, but let's just go with one last sentence from each of you of what you would say somebody dialed in should do first to get towards a really good structure for omnichannel orchestration.
I would go back to the first point. Check your data. Check your data. Make sure your data is proper, and then any orchestration, any omni-channel activity will work well after that. And yeah, and I would also put Tech's point of organization alignment is also important. But yeah.
Data, and organization appointment. That's a great sentence. I like it. And Tech?
It's those 2 points, but just it's to sell the dream, sell the vision, right?
Sell the dream.
Then the data will come. Then the the teams will come. If you don't have that alignment up front, you're just going to be wading through blocker after blocker, whether that's through data or whether that's through people, through organization.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us to share some of these insights. This has been hugely beneficial. And thank you everyone who dialed in this afternoon.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Georgie. Thank you, Masty.
Thank you, Georgie.
And thanks everybody else. All right.
Bye.
No.
Bye-bye.